Would you like to introduce yourself, Fantasy Football Pro?
No.
No, I don't think I will.
I wouldn't necessarily am a pro, though. Okay, but anyways, you might have seen me on a couple other videos. I am SUL Nia, or Sol Nia. In addition to playing video games with Mr. Seaman Calzone, I also do fantasy football.
Yeah, so Jake, has his own rankings. He has his own spreadsheet. He takes fantasy football pretty seriously. Meanwhile, I like football. I watch it. I watch it every Sunday. I've played fantasy for a few years, but nothing to that sort. I guess I'm sort of a fantasy football casual. So we'll see how this works out, me and his teams, and we'll, you guys can tell us whose team is better. So first, I'm just going to randomly generate which position I'll be drafting at. It's going to be a 12-team PPR draft, just pretty standard stuff. So this is going to be my position, and I'll be picking at 8, and this is Jake's position. He will be picking at 5.
I'm interested to see how Connor drafts.
No,
because I've run a few mock drafts here, and there are some players that can be had.
And I have not run any mock drafts here, so let's see how this goes.
We're gonna run the draft.
So Derrick Henry goes first. McCaffrey. I've never seen Henry go first. Oh my God, Taylor almost fell to you.
Yeah, you're usually gonna see CMC, Jonathan Taylor, the 1-2. Just so happens that the analyzer decided to mix it up a little bit.
Well,
but
it's not like any ACL injury or anything for Henry. It's like a foot injury is pretty big, but it's definitely not something he can't recover from.
Now I will say with Derrick Henry, buyer beware. He was not effective in the playoffs. He is heading towards that wrong side of 30. The Titans will not be the 1 seed in the AFC. That's not exactly a hot take here.
Are you sure
He's
about that?
Prime for regression, yes. Now, with all that being said, I'm at the 5 here. There are a couple options here. There's Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook. I actually don't like any of these guys here. Again, I'm going to take someone else. I'm going to take Najee Harris out of Pittsburgh. He is my running back 3. I think he's going to see the sophomore leap. And honestly, the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh doesn't matter. They lost some wide receiver talent in Juju. That's a lot of vacated targets there. Ben Roethlisberger retired. They're going to be bringing in a new offense, a lot of more RPOs. That was something Ben notoriously didn't like to run. So all of these factors lead to Najee Harris could have a really good season here. Now, you at the 1-8 also have a very interesting position.
Yeah, this is a pretty rough spot. I mean, Justin Jefferson's nice, but I really don't want to go him as my first pick. Dalvin Cook, I love Dalvin Cook when he's healthy, but that's, not a given when you're talking about Dalvin Cook. Anyone else seems like kind of a reach, though, so I feel like it really is between Chase, Adams, Cook, and Jefferson. And I just kind of want a running back, so I'm going to go with Dalvin Cook, I think.
It's never a bad idea to stock up on running backs early in the draft.
And especially because Cook is so good. I mean, Cook is an absolute stud. So if he can just stay healthy, that'll be a great pick. But another interesting pick right here. I mean, I see Tyreek at the top of my board. I'm not... Tyreek Hill is saying a lot of good things about Tua. I'm not sure how everyone else in the world feels about Tua besides Tyreek Hill. But he is definitely going to be the main target in Miami with Waddle. So that's an interesting pick there. So is CeeDee Lamb. With Amari Cooper out, he's definitely going to be the wide receiver 1 in Dallas now. So what I'm just wondering is who's got more touchdown potential, Tyreek Hill or CeeDee Lamb? Dak Prescott and CD, or Tua with Tyreek?
Tyreek has proven to be a top 5 guy. He's proven to be an absolute alpha receiver. This is a big year for CeeDee Lamb. He could do really well, or he could very well bust here. Now, that being said,
I think I am going to go safe, and I'm going to go with Tyreek for the reason, this is my casual reasoning. Besides Waddle, the Dolphins don't have that many weapons. I mean, Gesicki can sometimes score a touchdown, but running back wise, he's not going to have a lot of his touchdowns taken by running backs in Miami. And he is going to be a 1A, 1B with Jalen Waddle, and he's proven, like you said, that he can be an absolute, a top 5, top 3 wide receiver in fantasy. So I think I'm going to go Tyreek. That could definitely backfire, but I'm going to go with Tyreek.
Yeah, it's a really interesting position that you were put in.
Would you have taken CD?
I would have taken Tyreek. don't think CD is going to get a top 5 fantasy finish. I do think Dallas's offense is going to regress. Ezekiel Elliott's getting up there in age.
And off several injuries at this point.
Now, I'm again in an interesting position here.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Allen, Mark Andrews, quarterback, tight end. Normally, through the first few picks of the drafts, my philosophy, and you'll find this in a lot of like FFPC pro level leagues, try not to take the quarterback or the tight end. You only have one of those guys that you need. You need depth at wide receiver and running back because you have to fill those multiple times.
Like mid-second round seems way too early to take a quarterback, even if it's Josh Allen.
The guy that I wanted, Aaron Jones, is gone, but there is another running back on this board that I would be more than happy to get. And this might seem like a little reach on the sleeper app, but I'm going to pick Leonard Fournette.
I like Leonard. He was... Whoa, what the heck was that? Did you hear that sound?
That was the app. The app makes sound.
All right, well, you're back up. I like the Leonard Fournette pick. I think Leonard Fournette... I mean, I had him on my fantasy team last year, and he never stored me wrong. So how do we like the tight end at the top of the board right now?
Kyle Pitts is my tight end too. He was really good. He just didn't get a lot of touchdowns. That being said, I need a wide receiver. I'm not too keen on Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah.
David Montgomery I'd consider, but I think he may be back at the turn, or Josh Jacobs, someone like that. I am going to go DK Metcalf. Again, this might seem like a little reach on the app.
So with the terrible quarterback situation in Seattle, though?
Yes. I don't think that matters too much. If you look at the games that Russell Wilson was out last year in Seattle, the offense pretty much only peppered DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett with targets. Nobody else really got a look in that passing offense. I'm expecting that to be the same. And there is a chance that Baker Mayfield gets traded to the Seahawks, in which case DK Metcalf at the 3 is a fine pick. Now, looking at your roster, you have Dalvin Cook, you have Tyreek Hill. Your options here are Ezekiel Elliott, Patrick Mahomes,
not a fan of that.
Akers.
Yeah, so I'm looking running back or quarterback here. I'm gonna be honest with you because you don't have another pick. I like Waller or Kittle. I like Waller or Kittle at the turn, so I think one of them will be available at the turn, and I'm probably gonna go with one of them for my pick after this. So I'm looking running back here, or maybe quarterback. You know, Mahomes or Herbert is piquing my interest. Cam Akers is such a wild card. I mean, we just haven't seen too much of him.
Cam Akers is a guy I'm not too high on.
David Montgomery is a little bit of a reach at this point, but I do really like David Montgomery. So I think for me, it's either David Montgomery or Herbert. Yeah, I'm thinking David Montgomery's the move. There's a few other quarterbacks I like down a little bit further, so Herbert and Mahomes go there. So hopefully just both the tight ends don't get taken in these two picks right here. They don't, so I'm gonna go Kittle here. I like having a good tight end in fantasy, someone that you can always rely on. You know, you never love the receiving or, you know, any fantasy fit situation in San Francisco, but Kittle has always kind of gone a little bit above. He's always kind of superseded that thing in the 49ers where they don't have many fantasy relevant guys. I like Kittle, so I'm going to go him with this pick.
I really like the Kittle pick.
Yeah.
Looking at the board here, Josh Jacobs did come back to me. Now, that being said,
I like Josh Jacobs this year. I like him a lot, if I'm being honest.
I like him this year.
I also really like Deontay Johnson, though. You need a second wide receiver. I love Deontay Johnson. I had him on my board. I was maybe considering him for this pick if, like, I didn't have a tight end that I liked. Deontay Johnson, you know, he's not going to be great as he was last year with the quarterback situation, but at pick 40, or at rank 40, I really like Deontay Johnson.
I really like Deontay, too, here. However, I'm looking down the board at the wide receivers that could come back to me. And I'm excited about a couple of these guys. So I think I'm going to go the running back again. I'm going to get Josh Jacobs. And I'm not going to really worry about that position for the rest of the draft. Now, rounds 4 through 7, it's typically known as the RB dead zone.
Yeah, there's not a lot. I'm looking at the board right now. I mean, I like Elijah Mitchell has some potential, but maybe Miles Sanders has some potential. But besides that, I'm really not seeing too much that I like at the running back position.
Yeah, we're not You're not really looking to get running backs here. You're either looking to get them right at the beginning of the draft or towards after round 7 where they can be additive value. Looking at the board, the guy that I wanted fell back to me, Jerry Jeudy. I think he's Russell Wilson's #1 target up in Denver.
I think it's a good pick.
I'm thrilled to get him in the 5th round.
So my top 3 are quarterback, tight end, quarterback, but neither of these 2 quarterbacks are the guys that I'm really in love with. Not a huge fan of Lamar. I mean, I know he's great for fantasy, but I think he might be prone to some regression as well. Kyler, I don't know. There's not really any reason for me not really loving Kyler, but I'm just not the biggest fan of him. I don't really like having Kittle and Mitchell. Like, sometimes I don't mind having 2 players on the same team, but when it's like Kittle and Mitchell on a team like the 49ers, I'm not a fan of it.
This is a dangerous part of the draft here for you because you need another wide receiver. And looking at the board here, you have Allen Robinson, Marquise Brown, then you go down to Michael Thomas. We don't even know if he's going to play it again. And then Amon-Ra, Brandon Cooks, DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins suspended for 6 games, so you're not going to get him that first 6 weeks. Right now, I believe you need to weigh these options here. If
I'm being honest with you, I'd really rather have Hurts, Wilson, or Prescott. Fine waiting a little bit longer for a quarterback. Like I said, I do have 2 running backs. I'm decently happy with them, a little bit more injury prone, but I am happy with Montgomery and Cook. My pick here might be Marquise Brown because I don't hate that with Hopkins being out for 6 weeks. With Hopkins out, and Kirk gone, he might be their one receiver for the first 6 weeks, unless I'm forgetting about somebody, right?
Yeah, it's going to be the Marquise Brown and the Zach Ertz show in Arizona for the first 6 weeks.
And Kyler Murray does like throwing the deep ball, and that, regardless of Marquise Brown's hands, that every NFL knows that he does not have the greatest hands in the NFL. He is prone for a deep shot. So, Marquise Brown does have some tight end boom, or touchdown boom, I should say. So,
I think Marquise is definitely an interesting option. He's likely to be at least a wide receiver 2 the rest of the year with DeAndre Hopkins back. Arizona has a high passing volume offense. I will say if you're drafting Marquise Brown and you're doing that knowing you're gonna have to, after 6 weeks, probably not rely on him as much. I would then pick another guy. That's
what I'm thinking right now. At the turn here, Allen Robinson. I see Allen Robinson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Something that is intriguing to me, I'll say this because I feel anything that I'm thinking, I feel like they are also thinking. I am slightly interested in taking AJ Dillon here for the possibility that him and Aaron Jones kind of do like almost 50-50 the backfield after he broke out last year. I'm interested in taking AJ Dillon, but I don't think I'm gonna do it. I don't love Allen Robinson competing with so many guys in the Los Angeles Rams backfield or in their wide receiver core, but it does seem like he is the most consistent wide receiver to pick next year. Another option would be to pick DeAndre Hopkins to kind of hedge my bets once he comes back and like kind of survive with Marquise Brown.
That is an option. I'm not exactly in love with that because you picked Marquise.
Yeah, I'm going to take Allen Robinson. I don't love him and Kupp together, but he could still, get quite a few targets.
I'm a little upset here because the guy that I wanted went the pick before me. I wanted Brandon Cooks. I was hoping he'd come back to me in round 6. He's going to be the #1 target. Davis Mills at times looked like the best rookie quarterback of the class. He definitely could take a sophomore leap. It's not unreasonable to say that, even if he was not a first-round pick like all of the other quarterbacks were. Looking at the board here, we have Dalton Schultz, Damian Harris, AJ Dillon, Kenneth Walker. Then we have Jalen Hurts, DeAndre Hopkins, Darnell Mooney, Dallas Goedert. If you're in this position right here, it would not be a bad thing to take one of the quarterbacks, one of the remaining tight ends. But for me, I still want to build that wide receiver depth. And I know once DeAndre Hopkins comes back from suspension, he's going to be a top 5 guy.
Yeah, I could come back to bite me not taking Hopkins. I really was considering Hopkins at the turn there. We'll see how it works out. For me, it's more hedging. For you, it's more like later potential.
So now I'm going to start to consider the other 2 positions, the tight end and the quarterback.
Yeah, I really don't hate the Goddard pick, your homeboy Goddard, Philadelphia Eagle pick right here.
And I am going to be taking Dallas Goedert here. Dallas Goedert on the Philadelphia offense is a guy who can be a top 5 tight end. He's going to be productive. And if you're looking for that type of upside that you can get in these middle rounds, he's the way to go.
At this point, I see Dak is second on the rankings here. Dak was one of the quarterbacks that I like. You know, even if it takes a little bit of a regression, Dak Prescott throws a lot of passes. He throws a lot of touchdowns. He throws a lot of yards. He's great for fantasy. For a guy, he's one of the best fantasy guys that doesn't really run much. So I think here it's the other quarterbacks that I wouldn't mind having are Tom Brady. I don't love Aaron Rodgers not having many players. Matthew Stafford, he just doesn't do too much fantasy-wise. He's like a good fantasy quarterback, but not someone that I'm like really excited about. I could wait a little bit longer for someone like Trey Lance, someone who's got potential there, but I think I'm going to go with someone who I think is one of the most surefire guys, like one of the most consistent fantasy quarterbacks, and I'm going to go with Dak Prescott.
Yeah, that's a bad option. So
at this point, it's the 7th round. You know, 7th round is a point where you can take like a quarterback like that. Gabriel Davis did just go. I was looking at Gabriel Davis. He was someone that I kind of wanted. Garrett Wilson was actually the last 3 picks were players that I was not going to mind having. Cordarrelle, Garrett Wilson, and Gabriel Davis. So now that leaves us with like Hunter Renfrow is someone that I'm still pretty high on. You know, he's going to be the wide receiver 2 now with Devontae Adams, but he just got paid a shit ton of money. So he's definitely not going to not get any touches. Besides that, I mean, you have like Devin Singletary, Brandon Ayuk, I'm not going for another 49er guy. There's not too many other guys I'm super excited about. I think I feel pretty confident in Hunter Renfrow. Oh, there's also Devontae Smith. I actually did not see Devontae Smith up there. What? He's wide receiver 2 in Philly now with AJ Brown. But AJ Brown does not have the greatest injury history. He's gotten injured a little bit, and he is a little bit on the older side for football terms right now. So it's really Devontae Smith and Hunter Renfrow for me.
There's a guy here that I like more than the other one. I'm not going to tell you which one.
Yeah, no, as you should. I think that Jalen Hurts developed a good connection with Devontae Smith last year. So I think I'm going to go Devontae Smith over Hunter Renfrow. And Hunter Renfrow goes the next pick anyway, but give me your thought. Give me your take on it as a more seasoned fantasy football guy. Devontae Smith versus Hunter Renfrow.
I think most people would go Hunter Renfrow here. Now, that being said, there are a couple of factors here that are having me lean towards Devontae Smith. I think Devontae is a little younger, so he has a little bit more room to grow than Hunter Renfrow. Second, Hunter Renfrow did have a phenomenal fantasy season last year. However, keep in mind that Devontae Adams was not there, and Darren Waller was hurt for most of the year. Mm-hmm. So Derek Carr did not have a lot of options, especially
that is
after
something I wasn't considering. Is that, you know, there is also good tight ends for both these teams with Goddard and Waller, but Waller's an even bigger threat than Goddard. So Devontae Smith might be getting a few more touches than Renfrow.
I think, however, I can wait 1 or 2 more rounds before I can go quarterback here. I'm going to grab another running back. Pretty much, this is the last pick I'm going to address with this position. Maybe I'll take a flyer. I'm going to take Devin Singletary of the Buffalo Bills. Mm-hmm. He had a great ending to his season. Even though James Cook was drafted there, I'm not too threatened by him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good pick. Someone I had my eye on for sure.
Yeah, and going back around, Robert Woods, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady all went. Those are all guys that I would have taken at this 9 pick. We have guys like Melvin Gordon, Chase Claypool. I am, however, not too thrilled with the prospect of these quarterbacks that are likely to come back to me. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to take Matthew Stafford. He had a QB1 finish last year. He was on the Super Bowl defending Ram.
Chase Edmonds went pick before I wanted him.
That's tough.
He's one of the last guys that I'd really consider to be like a running back 1 on his team that were left on the board. The only other guy that maybe you would say that with is Rashad Penny, but I don't really know how he's going to do next year.
Rashad Penny is a very interesting pick at that point in the draft.
At this point in the draft, I mean, like I'm saying, like he is probably unless I'm forgetting about somebody, he might be the last running back 1 on the board. Is Robinson still the starter for the Jaguars, or they have like Travis Etienne now or whatever?
Robinson's hurt. When he comes back, I don't know about the situation.
It's a tough position here. I mean, it's also Melvin Gordon, but Javonte Williams is probably going to be the pretty consensus running back 1 on that team. Michael Carter, it's probably going to be Breece Hall. James Robinson, like you said, is kind of up in the air.
Looking at your team, you do need another running back.
I definitely do need another running back. So I think I'm going to go with Rashad Penny. Don't love it.
I would have went with Rashad Penny as well. Now, he's probably going to get hurt. You're looking at his history, so you're probably going to want to get another back here.
So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hedge, and I'm going to take Alexander Madison. I thought he was going to be available at the turn. I don't think he'd be available on my next pick.
Madison is interesting.
He's always done pretty well when Cook has been hurt. I do know that because I've had Cook in like 2 of my last 3 fantasy drafts. And he's always done a pretty good job when Cook has been injured, so he can definitely, hold the tide when he's injured. I like hedging my first round picks if there is like a decent backup option available. So since Alexander Madison is a good running back that's backing up Cook, I like hedging my bets there and taking Madison.
Now, Al Lazard went, Christian Watson went. I'm going to take one of the wide receivers for another one of these top 5 quarterbacks here. Going to take Sky Moore, rookie for the Kansas City Chiefs. Mm-hmm. I think with Tyreek Hill gone, he's inheriting a really interesting position here. And the player that I wanted next came back to me, Cole Kmet of the Chicago Bears. The Bears don't have a lot. They have Darnell Mooney and they have Cole Kmet, and that's it. And Cole Kmet, of the two, is more likely to be a top 5 player at his position. And now that Jimmy Graham is gone, it's likely to happen to Cole Kmet. He's likely to get those targets now in the red zone. And if you would have given Cole Kmet even 3 touchdowns, he would have had a similar finish to Mike Gesicki, who was the tight end 1.
So at my next pick, I think I want to go one more wide receiver here, and then there's a running back I'm looking at in round 12. I don't love Kenny Galladay or Russell Gage just because, Russell Gage is going to be like a wide receiver 3 at best in Tampa Bay, but he's at least on a good offense, unlike a guy like Kenny Galladay. I don't know anything about Jahan Dotson. I don't know who that is. Jacoby Myers, Mac Jones doesn't throw too much. Tim Patrick has some potential on the Broncos, but I don't know. I think I'm just going to have to go with a guy like Russell Gage.
I think in these later rounds, there's a lot of value that you can get out of these wide receivers. Russell Gage, as reports are coming in that Chris Godwin may not be ready to start the season, his stock will rise and he may not be
at least for the first 2 weeks or something like that. I'm thinking that he might be a flex option, until Godwin's back. He could be a flex option. So
I think he may be a flex option even after Godwin is back. If you looked at what the Bucs did with 3 wide receivers when they had Antonio Brown, it could be something like that where they utilize him in that role.
Yeah, I mean, Gage is a good he's a good wide receiver for sure. I'll just make my pick here. Someone I see as one of the better flex options in case I need him it's a little bit of a reach, but J.D. McKissic. He just is so involved in the passing game in Washington. Even if he's not the running back 1, he can still be like an emergency flex option because of his receiving prowess in a PPR league. So I'm going to take him as just a potential flex guy.
Yep, I agree. I think J.D. McKissic is always going to be a guy who you can rely on, especially given that Washington does not trust Antonio Gibson at this point in the passing offense. And really, with Brian Robinson and them drafting him, Antonio Gibson may be phased out of the offense at some point if he either fumbles again too much or he's hurt.
Yeah, so, and that's the thing. Gibson's coming off of a pretty big injury, so I mean, there even is potential for McKissic to be like even more involved in the running game as much as he's already going to be involved in the passing game. So I like McKissic a lot at this 12th round pick.
Now, I'm not in love with taking the guy that I am going to take, given that I had drafted Jerry Jeudy. However, I do think Tim Patrick can definitely be a flex guy in this offense. I think he could be really good here. You have guys like Marlon Mack, Khalil Herbert, Raheem Mostert, Gus Edwards still on the board. Mark Ingram still on the board, especially given the recent news about the suspensions near Alvin Kamara, where he's expected to get at least 6 games as of now. Mark Ingram is definitely a guy who can give you a lot of early value at the running back position. However, I have 3 starters and a 4th potential starter at running back. I'm not looking too hard at the position. However, I'm always looking to bolster my bench in the event that someone gets hurt or in the event that I may need another running back, I'd rather not turn towards the waiver wire unless it's necessary. That being said, Gus Edwards on the Ravens is a player who can see a lot of running volume and a lot of touches because of how the Baltimore offense is built. He's coming off that injury, but again, so is his backfield mate, J.K. Dobbins. So I'm guessing that they are going to be in a split here.
There's a few players with potential left on the board, but what I think that I want to do is I'm looking at a defense here because there's no one I'm really in love with that's going in the next 2 picks. So I'm thinking between the Rams defense and the Buccaneers defense. Those are the 2 that I'm considering. I mean, the Rams lost Von Miller, but they still have really good defense. The Buccaneers always have a good defense, and they have a slower kind of pace of play, you know, running a lot with Lenny, hitting a lot of shorter, you know, passes with Tom Brady at the quarterback. So I think I'm going to go with the Buccaneers defense here. Because then a lot of good defenses are going to go off here, which is what I was worrying about. Because I think the Buccaneers would have gone, the 49ers. The only defense I was really looking at was the Buccaneers, Rams, or the Niners or the Bills. So since all those went off before my turn, I'm pretty happy with that. Now looking at some other stuff, I do have 5 running backs and 5 wide receivers. But one of my running backs is pretty much just a hedge for my top guy. Another one is a guy that's more of a flex option than like a real running back. So I got to think about what if, you know, I have a few injuries at the running back position. I don't hate either Raheem Mostert or Khalil Herbert here. I'm going to wait till the last round to take a kicker. I don't mind taking a kicker off of waivers. It's just a pretty luck dependent thing in my opinion on, you know, how many field goals a team's going to get. Like, you can't predict when a team is going to score a touchdown and when they're going to settle for a field goal. Like, obviously, you know, there are players who are better at kicking field goals, and that's a little bit important, but I don't mind waiting for the last round to get a kicker. So I'm really thinking between Raheem Mostert and Khalil Herbert right here. There's no other running backs I'm super excited about besides maybe, like, Mark Ingram. Like you said, there's the potential there with Kamara being out that he might be the number 1 guy for at least a little bit. It's a tough pick here, but I think I'm going to go Mark Ingram.
Yeah, I mean, looking at your running backs, I think Mark Ingram definitely, in the event that something happens, or in the event that you need a guy because someone's not performing as well.
At least for the first few weeks.
Yeah, at least for the first few weeks.
And the thing is that if someone is really in need of a running back in the first few weeks, that's a guy that I would not mind trading for some you know, future value or something like that for someone who's really running back hungry.
I'm going to take Daniel Carlson. I'd prefer to take kickers over defenses. A general rule of thumb for me, whenever I'm drafting, I always take my defense in the final round because I can stream matchups for defense a lot easier than with kickers. I think that defenses, unless they're like truly special, are expendable in fantasy football. And there's no real reason why you should use any of your picks except for the last 2 on defense or kicker when you can go ahead and get a guy who can either potentially be on the bench as a decent flex option or in the event something happens, contribute right away. Looking at the defenses here, I still have a bunch of really good defenses here. I still have the Steelers. I still have the Patriots. I'm going to take the Patriots here. Really, it's interchangeable. I think the Patriots offense is going to be a little better than the Steelers offense. It'll give the defense less chances on the field. It's a good idea to pick a defense with a corresponding really good offense, or unless you know the defense is really stacked.
Yeah, and then here my last picks. I mean, I'm thinking just high-powered offense, good kicker, Matt Prater. Solid pick, I feel. And then that's the draft, 15-person draft.
So this draft, I really took a focus on trying to build up my wide receivers and my running backs. You can see that in the first 6 rounds. Round 1, I went Najee Harris at the 1-5. Then at the 2-8, I took Leonard Fournette, one of the only backs that I thought could be a top 10 guy still at that point. I took DK Metcalf in the 3rd at the 5, Josh Jacobs at the 4-8. Then I took Jerry Jeudy and DeAndre Hopkins to round out that wide receiver core. Even with the suspension, when Hopkins comes back, I believe he will be a top 10 wide receiver.
It's definitely a playoff move right there, taking DeAndre Hopkins. I was really considering him at that 6'5 spot. I think you low-key almost talked me out of him a little bit. I don't know. I would have liked him at that 6'5 spot, but I didn't end up taking him.
I would have liked him or Brandon Cooks or Amon Ra at that point. It just so happens that Hopkins fell to me. Then in the 7th round, I took Dallas Goedert. 8th round, mostly rounding out the running backs with Devin Singletary of the Bills. 9th round, I took my quarterback, Matthew Stafford. 10th round, I took Sky Moore, rookie wide receiver of the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that he has a real opportunity here to emerge year one as Patrick Mahomes' number one target on an exciting offense that you know is going to perform with top-level QB play. So that's more of a potential type move.
No, I love
Round 11.
Sky Moore at the 10th round pick. I like that a lot.
I liked it too. That's why I did it. Then in final 5 picks, Cole Kmet, round 11. I think he's going to be one of the 2 guys that you can really target on the Chicago passing offense. The other being Darnell Mooney. Round 12, rounding out my wide receivers, I took Tim Patrick. He's somewhat of a handcuff, and I'm not in love with doing that. But with the wide receivers near him, I was not excited about any of these other guys. Round 13, round out my running backs by taking Gus Edwards, who has an opportunity to see some real volume in Baltimore, given how their offense is structured, given that they don't really have any receiving talent outside of Mark Andrews and maybe second-year wide receiver Rashad Bateman. And then the final 2 picks were kicker and defense. I just so happened to take Daniel Carlson in the Patriots.
All right, yeah, I like your draft. I mean, I love Najee Harris and Leonard Fournette as your 2 top running backs. Josh Jacobs is interesting. It's just no one really knows how he's gonna do. The only thing that I worry about for your team as a casual football fan is that for the first 6 weeks, your wide receivers might not be the most productive. I mean, DK Metcalf, it's going to mostly depend on, do the Seattle Seahawks, obviously we're doing this a month and a half before the season starts, 2 months before the season starts. The thing is DK Metcalf going to have a good quarterback? Is he going to score some touchdowns in those first 6 weeks? Because you're probably going to have to start him those first 6 weeks. Jerry Jeudy, I like a lot. He's going to be the number 1 target on the Denver Broncos, but the wide receiver core might not be great, and especially because we are in PPR, sometimes people do go that third wide receiver. It's going to be a little bit rough, your wide receiver core, but your running back core of Najee, Leonard Fournette, Jacobs, Singletary, and Gus Edwards at a 5-1 is really good.
Let's talk about that for a sec. I think I can see where the concern comes from. However, looking at last year, DK Metcalf, even with large stints of the season where Russell Wilson was not there or was hurt, was the wide receiver 14 in PPR. He did have games where he was boom bust, but for the most part, he was pretty good as a wide receiver. He averaged about 14 points a game. And given my running backs, and given the fact that I have Jerry Jeudy, I can just plug in Josh Jacobs for the first 6 weeks before DeAndre Hopkins comes back. I'm not too concerned about that.
We have Dalvin Cook at the first position. I wasn't actually, once I got the 8th pick, I didn't think that Cook would fall to me there, but I guess it's because, there were a lot of running backs taken in the first 6 picks, only running backs. I honestly would have preferred Mixon over Cook, I think. I would have preferred, anyone that was taken in the top 6 over Dalvin Cook, but at pick number 8, I do still think Cook has a lot of value. I mean, he's had a few problems with injuries, but he's never missed like a huge part of a season. He's just kind of had lingering injuries that he just doesn't play like 17 games a year. He might play like 13 games a year. But that's the reason I kind of handcuffed him with Madison later in the draft, is that when he does play though, I mean, he's a 200-yard potential anytime he, touches the field. Like he's an amazing guy. So I like Dalvin Cook at 1. Tyreek Hill at the turn on the 2nd round pick. I do like, he was looking at the 6th wide receiver to go off the board. I'm very happy having Tyreek Hill be the 6th wide receiver off the board coming to my team. Being a really solid guy that I can plug in at the wide receiver and not even think about every single week. David Montgomery is my 2nd running back. I like him a lot too. Hopefully he doesn't get injured, but I really like my top 2 running backs of Cook and Montgomery if they can stay healthy. 4th round, I don't usually take tight ends super early unless it's a guy that I'm excited about, and Kittle being the 5th wide receiver off the board is something I'm really happy with. I feel like he is the last guy that was really taken that's not really like a tight touchdown or bust kind of guy. Like Kittle will get a lot of receiving yards. No other guys, I think, really at the tight end position are really going to get a ton of receiving yards a game. So I like having Kittle at the 4th round. Then Marquise and Allen Robinson is the 5th and 6th rounds. I like Marquise. Actually, I'm worried about my wide receiver 2 after DeAndre Hopkins comes back. I'm fine with having Marquise as the wide receiver 2 for the first 6 weeks, but I'm a little bit concerned afterwards because the rest of the guys on my team are not really top guys at their position at their position on their own team. Like Allen Robinson's going to be a 3rd option. Devontae Smith is a 2nd or 3rd option depending on where you weigh him with Dallas Goedert, and then Russell Gage will be a 3rd option. At least, a lot of these guys do have some things working for them. Like Allen Robinson, he's on a really good offense. Russell Gage, Godwin's going to be out for a little bit maybe. But yeah, the wide receivers are a little bit suspect. Took Dak Prescott as my quarterback in the 7th round. Then in the 9th and 10th rounds, I took Rashad Penny because he will be at least a running back 1 most likely for most of the season. I'm not exactly sure how good of a running back he is or how much he'll produce, but he is a running back 1. Like I said, Madison is good for handcuffing Cook in case he gets injured. Talked about Russell Gage already. I really like J.D. McKissick as a 12th round pick. Antonio Gibson is coming off an injury. He did have some problems fumbling the ball, even though he did have quite a few yards last season. But he's going to be involved in the passing game, so he's always a potential flex option in case I need him. And if Antonio Gibson either falls out of favor in Washington or gets injured, J.D. McKissick's a great guy to put into the flex position. Mark Ingram is another guy that's going to be good for the first 6 weeks in case Kamara's injured. Could use him as a trade piece in case someone's really running back hungry at the beginning of the season. And then I took Tampa Bay in the 13th round and Prater in the 15th round.
Yeah, so looking at your team, I really like what you did with the first 2 running backs that you took. Dalvin Cook, I have in my rankings as my running back, I believe 6.
So take him to 8 and the 7th running back is good value.
Yeah, I have Dalvin Cook as my running back 6, and I have David Montgomery as my running back 14. So I think you did really well there. I also really like Rashad Penny in the 9th round. I have him within that top 30. So I'm not too concerned about your running backs. Obviously, the only thing...
Especially with Madison as a handcuff and McKissick. Yeah, I definitely really like my running backs. My running backs, I think, are very solid.
Yes, I think your backs are solid. I don't love the strategy of the handcuffing, but with Dalvin Cook there, if he were to miss games, I think it is a really good thing that you have his backup. David Montgomery, he's usually a guy that doesn't get hurt that much, so I think that's also a good pick to have and a good back to have with a guy like Dalvin Cook. Now, that being said, looking at the wide receivers, Tyreek, I do have him in my top 10, but there is a chance that Tua cannot support him and Jalen Waddle, and I'm unsure in the event that happens which one Tua would prefer to go to. Looking at your wide receivers after Tua, though, it's definitely a bit more risky.
Yeah, the wide receiver 2 position is going to be really rough. That's my biggest regret of this draft is that maybe instead of taking Kittle in the 4th round, as much as I'd like having a solid wide receiver, I maybe should have taken a Deontay Johnson, Amari Cooper, Michael Pittman, Mike Williams, like Jerry Jeudy, like any of those guys might have been the pick to take instead of George Kittle, just because then the wide receivers got pretty rough afterwards.
Personally, I would not have used my pick, like picks 1 through 4 on a tight end. That to me is where you round out your wide receiver and your running back starters.
Yeah, so I guess kind of like wrapping up like my team discussion here, it's like I like my running backs a lot, right? Montgomery, Cook at the running backs, great. I'm very happy with Dak as my quarterback. He's a really good fit. He's a consistent fantasy quarterback who just throws a lot of passes. I like my backup running backs in Rashawn, Madison, and McKissick. With the way that my team is structured, I might like do Rashad Penny at my flex week 1 and kind of see what happens from there. But my philosophy is if Marquise Brown, Allen Robinson, or Devontae Smith, one of those 3 guys kind of breaks out and shows like a humongous amount of worth on their team, I think that my team is very, very well set to at least make the playoffs. If none of those 3 guys end up panning out, I'm in a little bit of trouble, with my wide receiver 2 position. But I'm hoping that at least one of those 3 guys can be a consistent enough wide receiver 2 for me, and I like my team a lot.
Yeah, and I think of all of the positions, wide receiver is definitely the easiest to stream on the waiver wire.
Yes.
You have guys last year like Tim Patrick on the waiver wire. I believe he went in the 13th or the 12th round. I took him.
12th round, yeah, you took, yeah.
He went in the 12th round of the draft. So there is value in the waiver wire, especially at the wide receiver position. If there is one position where you needed to have a weakness, it probably would have been like your wide receiver 2 or your tight end. There were some things that I thought that maybe you could have either done differently or you could have improved on, especially taking a defense.
Yeah, but the thing is that like I wasn't really huge on anyone. Except maybe Gus Edwards I would have taken. But the thing is, I was already fairly set on taking Mark Ingram, and I didn't think that I knew I was going to take him, especially with where his rank was. So I was fine taking a really good defense, and then just like I could have switched taking Mark Ingram in the 13th round and Buccaneers defense and a defense in the 14th round, but like to me that doesn't really matter. I know it's probably not like a fantasy football because you guys probably like you're more invested in this. You've made your rankings. You know who like more steal options are in those later rounds. I don't, so I already had my eye on Mark Ingram for quite a few rounds before that, so I was pretty confident he would still be there in the 14th round, so I might as well take a good defense in the 13th round. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think Mark Ingram definitely would have been there. If it were me personally, I would not have risked it, but you got him in the end, so it doesn't matter. I do think you drafted a pretty decent team here, though, and I think I'm a little proud of you.
Hey, okay, so, as long as I have the Fantasy Football Pro seal of approval, I'm happy.
As fantasy football season comes closer, there are definitely tools that you can use to analyze your team, your drafting strategy, and really refine it so that you can beat your friends in your friend leagues. Or if you take it a little more seriously, really attempt to win a couple bigger leagues.
And that's why this video is sponsored by Sleeper.
No, we're not sponsored. However, if you do want to have a tool, there's definitely my podcast on fantasy football, Fantasy Fallout. You can find it on Anchor. You can find it on Sleeper. You can find it linked in the description to this video. So if that's something that interests you, definitely check out my podcast. Yeah, this has been a fun one, Connor.
Yeah, and last thing I want to say before we end this is that, do keep in mind that we are drafting this as of July 3rd. So, there's plenty of rankings that could change between now and the start of the fantasy football season. Amari Cooper probably goes higher if we find out that Deshaun Watson somehow doesn't get suspended. Alvin Kamara, maybe he somehow doesn't get suspended. He goes way higher up the board. There's definitely, we don't know Chris Godwin's injury status to start the season. There are definitely ways that these rankings can change between now and the start of the fantasy football season, but these are our, perceptions of players that we're using as of July 3rd. So, Thanks for watching. Like I said, Jake's podcast is in the description. Besides that, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.